Okay, so welcome everyone to Night Call, which is in partnership with Defunct Magazine. We're really thrilled to have them, and special thanks to the Queen's Council on the Arts, for the Arts, of the Arts. It's something QCA. So I wanted to say a few brief words about how this idea came about for Night Call, but first we'd like to hear from Erin, Stalcup, and Defunct Magazine and what they're up to.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. I'm Erin Stalcup, the new editor-in-chief of Defunct, which is an online magazine that once published 8 issues, then went on hiatus for 8 years, and that we're relaunching this fall. I know Rosebud Ben-Oni from the literary magazines I worked for before, Waxwing and Hunger Mountain. As an ex-physics major and a lover of words, Rosebud's work astounds and dazzles me. So when she said on social media that she was doing this bizarro new project and was looking for a home for it, I wrote her and I said, I want it. My magazine isn't up and running yet, I said, but I want it. She said, well, we're looking for like a hard yes. And I said, this is a hard yes. She said, but you haven't seen it yet. And I said, that's because it's not done yet. I'll see it when it's done, but I want it. Basically, I trust Rosebud, and I want to be a part of whatever she's up to. And of course, she exceeded expectations. Her work and the work of these 8 Queens poets she's gathered to write and read alongside her are brilliant. This project is about discovery, curiosity, living after trauma, and connecting after so long apart from each other. I've seen these poems on the page, and the range and depth is breathtaking. I'm so grateful to each of you for your work, and I look forward to hearing and then publishing the poems and a recording of this reading in Defunct Issue 9, which will launch in mid-November. Rosebud trusted me before seeing my magazine, and you all did too. Defunct is based in Brooklyn, and we are so happy to relaunch with our neighbor borough and this collection about resilience. So thank you.
So thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Erin. How I came about this project was during the pandemic. I began writing a series of poems called Night Call, which explores how poetry can confront and unravel the greater unsolved problems in physics, using, for example, the arrow of time, for example, how things that happen cannot unhappen according to the arrow of time, as well as entropy as conceits to address sexual assault and other violences. Given that the poems and the idea came out of the pandemic, a year in which my life was drastically altered, and that I live in Queens, which for a time was the epicenter of COVID cases, I wanted to start this project with a joint poetry gathering and public reading with Queens-born or based poets. Here I asked them how one can rethink how to approach the idea of discovery, which for me has always not been about possessing or taking over. Rather, it's about curiosity itself. Having grown up in a most unstable environment, I find a lot of freedom in being able to confront directly on the page what I couldn't in real life. This gathering of poets will challenge the frameworks that govern our lives, whether it's the standard model, institutional religion, politics, healthcare, especially how we treat survivors, or family. These frameworks, which were never solid and sealed in the first place, all in pursuit of some peculiar new joy and transformation from a state of erasure and nothingness and chaos magnified by the pandemic. In addition to the periods of sheltering in place and social distancing, the virus has affected everyone. I just added someone, I'm sorry. The virus has affected everyone, unfortunately, and shaken faith in institutions and those existing frameworks. So how can we as a community explore just what it means to still be curious about the world, to reframe our expectations? As a survivor, this project is especially important for me since domestic violence and assault cases spiked during the pandemic. It's important to me that we talk about the effects of living with trauma in a period of isolation as a kind of past continuous in one's mind and body. How do we meet each other again? How do we come together, connect? Hopefully, this is one way to do so. So the first poet reading tonight is a dear friend of mine, Jared Harel. And Jared, take it away.
Thank you, Rosebud. Thanks so much for bringing us all together with this wonderful Night Call series. And thank you to Erin and Defunct Magazine for publishing our work and giving us Queens writers this platform. To be perfectly honest, when Rosebud approached me to be part of this project, I immediately started looking through poems I'd already written to see if anything fit the theme. And I came up empty, and I'm happy I came up empty because it got me to write something new, which I'm kind of excited to share with all of you. So thank you for that. Finally, there's a tiny bit of singing in this poem, so I apologize for that in advance. The poem is called Meditation on Discovery and Thwarted Desire. The almond milk has turned. Flecks of foul snow slink in slow liquid. Not the discovery I had angled for this morning, but as my dad likes to sing like some Jewish Mick Jagger, you can't always get what you want, which is just what I croon to my two children, driving them up the wall, because of course all they want is to get what they want. A fifth scoop of gelato, to play Minecraft till their eyeballs pixelate in their skulls. What humbling work to haul kids towards thoughtful, the kind in humankind, like a foreign language on a stubborn tongue. Yet even as a toddler, my son would refuse a lollipop if his sister didn't get one, still plucks an extra sticker to gift her after school. And hell, my daughter can't ride an elevator without making a new friend or some lady's day by praising her earrings, her sweater, her purse. My point about discovery has escaped me by now, though I know the old chorus for thwarted desire. My cereal will be dry, coffee taken black. I will try against hope to be better than myself, which is all I've ever wanted and everything I need. Thank you. Our next reader is Paolo Javier.
Thank you, Jared, my brother. It's been a while. Thank you, Rosebud and Defunct, for bringing us all together. I'm going to try and do this. This is a piece called Eternity, and I submitted it because the theme is night calls, and this piece is called Eternity. And it was my homage to Joseph Cornell, who is one of the greatest artists of all time, and he made all his work in his basement in Flushing, and that house is still there. But also in terms of the themes that Rosebud was talking about, Cornell spent most of his adult life taking care of his brother, who had needs and a disability, and was also, I think, psychically shattered himself, and an outsider who I feel disanticipated everything in art today and continues to anticipate art tomorrow. So this is called Eternity, and I usually perform this with a film. My a cappella version. The end is the beginning you write once in your diary. Among your final entries, you report waking from a dream, in tears about not being introduced to a man in films, followed by sunshine breaking through going on 12 noon. 51 years ago this December, the morning of that day, you passed peacefully on your couch in your home in Utopia Parkway. You tell your sister Betty over the phone, you know, I was thinking, I wish I hadn't been so reserved. Tony Curtis said, quote, you adored women, but relationships weren't possible. You weren't able to put two and two together, to go from step to step, from holding hands to I'll see you later, come back at 4, we'll go to the movies. So you would note Mayarme. The rower becomes aware that he is in the grounds of a woman he knows. She may be there close to him. Raising his eyes, he might see her. The silence throbs with every possibility. And to the poet comes the idea of not raising his eyes, of keeping the possibilities intact and going away with the memory of that moment. You'd also memorize Dickinson's unrequited love for Kate Scott on page 286 of her biography, specifically how she had given up hoping for love and had learned to exist in isolation, like God. You would type up Rilke. In the letters written between 1910 and 1914, we find the poet continually expressing a longing for human companionship and affection, and then asking whether he would really respond to such companionship if it were offered to him, wondering whether, after all, his real task may not lie elsewhere. I know this will sound preposterous, Stan Brakhage said, but I think Cornell's contribution to the art of film exceeds anything he did in his boxes or collages. It's just that film isn't valued by society the way that art is. Cornell is a monumental figure. He was shamanic in his approach, always after magic and magical conjunctions. Rudy Burkhardt observed, quote, he wanted things to be found like his objects. He wanted them to be things that accidentally came his way. It's the opposite, say, of a Hitchcock movie, where he plans every shot. This will set them up, this will scare them. Cornell was against that completely, end quote. And let's face it, you're no Bruno Mars crooning, quote, just like the clouds, my eyes will do the same. If you walk away, end quote. You are too shy for X Factor. What could be more modern than yearning for what's past? Gold rain shards for the dark garments, seashells, slivers of glass, small ball bearings, brass or silver rings, ironic trope on halved eternity. Instead, I can see you sing backup for the Gerard Nerval band on their anthem, Je emporte mon amour comme un prédant la solitude, altering its chorus to, please don't speak too glowingly about my dreams. Hi, P. How are you? You were in my dream 2 nights ago. I was in the Philippines with my family in a big house that looked out over a river. And I was looking out of the window when you came by in a little red boat. And you saw me in the window and yelled my name. Then you said you would be right back, so I waited for you down by the water. When you came back, you gave me a fish on a plate that you had caught in the river and cooked. It smelled really good. And I was really happy to see you. Then you came into the house and hung out with all of my family. The end. I hope you're doing well. Jose. Dear Jose, I'm glad to hear you finally made it to the Philippines. I'm also relieved that I pulled up to you in a hot ride. Most of all, I'm grateful to see you again, to know that this made you happy, and that I got to meet and spend time with your family. Thank you for sharing this dream. Yours, Paolo. Rosebud Ben-Oni.
I'm trying to like clap and unpin and pin at the same time. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. The poem I'm going to read is called Poet Wrestling with Night Call, which I guess is kind of a transition period for my Poet Wrestling series to this new series. And I have a note just to sort of explain some of the references. I wrote this poem in extreme peril. And the night I wrote it, I felt the presence of 3 visionaries with me. And it's a presence I felt ever since. And that happens to be the artist Hilma af Klint, my favorite physicist in the entire world, Hugh Everett III, who came up with the many worlds interpretations, and another physicist, Freeman Dyson. And the poem references concepts of the Dyson tree and Astro Chicken. I love Freeman Dyson. I really recommend checking out his work. He was wild. And the poem also deals with one of my favorite unsolved problems in physics, which is the arrow of time. It states that, as I said before, once an event happens, it cannot unhappen, as time can only move forward because of entropy, which increases disorder in the known universe. This poem also plays with the hypothesis that if I were to crash my matter self with my antimatter self, then I could travel at the speed of light. I'm hoping this happens one day. So I've been working on a series of poems about this hypothesis, and this is its first appearance, which again came to me that terrible night of the pandemic. So this is Poet Wrestling with Nightcall. Who believes glass must shatter so bad? Bad things don't matter, so they don't befall you, and who strikes in such crescendo this new and twisted tempo? Who will blame sheltered in the pressure and pre-war? And who says who didn't mean? And when it was, who stopped believing in havening home? Oh, who says you should have known till death do us is less nexus than sticky snare? It sows the share all that pent up and low. Whose first soured arboral auroral, and you cannot unstay, no take backs, no unknotting the days, no caution now drown, and who glistens upon muffled ground? Blunt object you shrunk and rootlessly sound, and only, yes, it were only, who broke you? What? How could you stay? How love suddenly shambles its face after all was done to grace, and what hell left for you to erase? The arrow of time cannot unhappen the unmade, and maddening of whose mind? How struck you there were signs? Don't. Though who still thrusts and whittles and hones? No correlation. Who says it has no bones and no linear deviation? Who says who and can't unsolve blame? No, you will never prove. How Hilma and Hugh, faithful and second sight, they saved you. No one will believe that night. It will not hold how they went against the speed of light, escapeful and amble of time to antimatter, you little quantum haze, and crashing out of bad things. How the three of you did steer Dyson-esque comets of space horse time and dandelion and thick vine, miles of coiled evergreen for outer solar din, as Dyson did sing, careful, my little astro chickens. Oh, little hadrons, oh, holy and mismatched, try to isolate hobbled in from hemorrhaging glass, but you had to come back as the last shards flounce and clunder and crash. Hugh is still in wind, Hilma tunneling through vex and jeer, no gospel, no fruit, no worth is your life. Who said, saying to air, they won't leave you, they did will reach and ensue now, move. And who believes who simply could not stop, who promised never again, and reason enough for why morning comes ungentle and pre-loved? Who will tell you is a reason pre-war elevators still have doors, is they point to all open. So who never falls you, but fermatas once and for some inevitable entropy, a most peculiar joy of finally facing, who tried to unhappen you. No, there is no going back. It is not love nor law that drives such things on and on and on. Thank you. Oof. Next up, we have Anada Lima. I'm looking. Here we go.
And then now I have to pin. There you go. There you go. Thank you so much, Rosebud. That was beautiful, really amazing. And yeah, thank you for having me here. And just to give you an introduction to the poem I'm going to read, when Rosebud contacted me, the call for night call was so beautiful, and I loved the I didn't know what I was gonna write for a while, and that sort of like prompted me for discovery. So that was really lovely having that feeling, and I ended up writing it. I wrote a lot of pandemic poems that were very sad and very sort of constrained in my little apartment. But this one I wrote after I got vaccinated, and me and my son, we had been camping uh, in the second half of the pandemic, sort of very isolated. So we engineered everything so that we wouldn't see anybody. But after I got vaccinated and sort of late in the spring, we drove back to Queens, and we'd been out of cities for a long time, and it's just that feeling of returning and seeing all these people. And it was just really lovely. So I'm right. It's about that. And shortly after this event, like this time that I read on the poem, I saw Casey, and we had like frosés, and it was awesome. So here you go. It's called Return. And just like that, I am back where I used to be, home, the skyline of New York City, the East River underneath, like the next line in a poem. I am here with my son again, with so many people, masked, unmasked, masks dangling from their ears, baby blue, paper white, returning soft, serve rainbow sprinkles, food trucks, children, tourists, us, tourists. He doesn't remember it here, doesn't know that self, that baby I love, that baby, still him. Like I am, still me, here and superposed elsewhere, like words like here, like now, written, then read. Now, here I am, so I am in Queens. I am still Lake Michigan, Vitória da Conquista, Brasília, Itabuna, Ilhéus, the dunes, Swanee, and still in my apartment, April 2020, fearful and hungry for this. Queens, I press enter, return to a new line. I am the baby my mother knows. I am the mother gone and unknowable in the old yellowing photograph. I am home in Queens. I tell him, this place is also yours. Here you put a rock in your mouth. Here you stumbled your first steps over gravel. Here you came out of the house for the first time, newborn. Thank you so much. And now, Sherese Francis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda. That was inspiring. Thank you, Rosebud and Erin, for the opportunity to be amongst these wonderful poets. Thank you for the call, which inspired me to write this poetic essay I'll be reading tonight. That was inspired by some of the thoughts I had being isolated in my room during quarantine and thinking about the things that we can discover in what it has been buried over time and in the silences. So this poem is called The Illusion of Rediscovering Reality. It was just good marketing for productivity not worth the hype. Is shock another form of discovering what was already there inhabiting a space? Are we too comfortable with normal, or what we think we now know, or what we choose not to now know, or what we choose not to take time to now know? In horology, the making of timepieces is called fabrication. Do we have more time? Or are we covering up the weakness of our skin's ability to hold everything together? The all arms just got louder and closer. We took away too many rest stops in between. The next one is too far away. Rest where you can find it. Now, now is what we choose to sense, to admit to ourselves, to give our attention. The accumulation in this room is a timepiece, and unpacking it, a time travel. Don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain. The all arms just got louder and closer. Since you looked, now, the cost of paying attention and not paying attention sooner. My room has cracks along the walls and ceilings. I don't have enough power to fix them. I'm just aware that they are there and that this room may one day collapse. I am aware always of what can kill me. A bullet, a man's hands or knees, a virus, a prison cell, an institution's letter of support, laws in favor of the rich and powerful, a viral thread about the justification of my death, a religious doctrine, an influencer's black square, a hurricane, parades of symbolism and no protection or compensation, a flood, a structural collapse, a system-wide failure due to neglect, my lack of cleanliness, or my overconsumption of the dead. I can't afford to look away, as I know I could be the first body on the line. I just choose not to pay attention sometimes so I can live in the now. The all arms just got louder and closer. I am aware always of my disposability. My room is too. The fortress of books, even those yet to be read and written, can't prevent me nor them from slipping through the cracks of history into a pile of things refused because there was no time for them. I collected tarot and oracle decks hoping I would have time to study them. And it took a pandemic for me to read again myself and my own grief, AKA the gravity of all that I was carrying. It can happen here. It already has many times. I, just like everyone else, want to forget for some peace of mind and the lie that I keep moving forward in time. The all arms just got louder and closer. My family received an offer to move into church friend's home, a mother and daughter who passed away from the coronavirus. This is another reminder that all gifts come at a cost, are too a form of loss. Freedom keeps revealing itself as a complicated project. I've been making and unmaking it my entire life for survival against another shifting construction and delusion of having more time. There are other kinds of quarantines when your presence is also viewed as dis-ease. My mother still asks me if I read the Bible and I say yes, but not in the ways she nows. I am still digesting the ruins of the church's body of history, its violence, redemption, and mistranslation. She still believes only in its current version. If you don't believe, you are not saved. The all arms just got louder and closer. What is my presence? A history, the dead piling up and hidden, raging and in despair. I no longer want to lie to myself, to couch in civilization's coffin clock, acting like everything is fine and moving forward. I am not, no now. My room is still a mess. I am too. I am still unpacking. I am overwhelmed by the boxes and containers and the chair and the fraction of floor space I have to move. Did you see that on Zoom? Or was I hiding it behind my screen background? The all arms just got louder and closer. Thank you. And next we have Safia Jama.
Thank you so much, Sherese. That was amazing. Wow. So thank you, Rosebud, for rallying us together. Can everyone hear me okay? Cool, okay. And thank you also to Defunct Magazine, Erin, and I think Eli is here on the call too. And it's really fun to see everyone. So I resonated with the lines about I'm a mess. I feel like I'm a mess. Yeah, I'll just admit that up front. So I don't have much of the intro to provide for this poem, other than to say it was one of those rare poems that just sort of came to me, and out of a period of isolation, and it was like, felt like a gift. So I wanted to try to capture the feeling that I had, that that really felt like, you know, something I needed, and I wanted to try to write toward that light and that healing. And so yeah, it's called Groundwater. Yesterday's low point, stewing over other people's joy, as if I'll never get my own. I don't want to live like that. This morning's meticulous breakfast, stale Christmas cookies crumbled over plain yogurt. Voila, granola. I weigh the pros and cons of madness, an appealing means of escape, or else I'll just take a walk. The fields are muddy these days, patches of grass so green, nourished by sunshine, then snow melt. Last night, I waited for the new moon. Perhaps the most difficult thing is knowing what you yourself are, and then accepting that this puzzle can never safely be disassembled. Let it be. Groundwater is something we all need. It can't be made, yet it keeps the earth green and fed. In the dark of the moon, I dreamt frustrating dreams, forgetting my favorite flip-flops in a hotel bathroom, walking across familiar grounds wearing a soiled bathrobe after I had been so careful to remain clean. In the wee hours of morning, I experienced a recognition, a powerful knowing that I possess all that I need. And then I thought of groundwater, and then I heard, weep for me. Thank you. So next up, we have the marvelous Mariahadessa Ekere Tallie. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Safia. It's such a joy to be here with all you amazing poets. Thank you, Rosebud. Thank you, Defunct Magazine. Thank you, poets. This is a gift, an absolute gift. This is something that I wrote, and it's a meditation, really. So I thought it was funny that Jared and I were both meditating. I read Bell Hooks's All About Love a few years ago, and my mind was blown, right? It's the type of thing you need to read over and over again to really get it. And by getting it, I mean embodying it. And I so wish I was. But during the pandemic, obviously, right, with family home, with no place to go, you start to really think about your relationships and what you're doing and why you're doing it, right, in all your relationships. And so I started really thinking about what love is and why I use the word. Like, my family is a family that uses the word love a lot. But I started to think, what is love? And who do I love? And how do I know that I love those people? Right. And so this piece is called Meditation on the Meaning of the Word. As noun, I used the word given to me. It was not a lie. It was the language I had. Verb. We crochet an ocean of listening, cast a net of light. Lit candle of a mother's tongue. Why the child knows deep water, not drowning. Or why the drowning transforms to baptism. A seeing, a vigil we hold for each other. So I would like to introduce Casey Trommer.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mariahadessa. That was fantastic, as always. And I'm so glad to be in a virtual room with all of you. Rosebud, thank you for gathering us together. And Defunct, thank you for printing all of us and putting us all in a lovely folio. I'm so excited to see that. I love all of you, and I love your work. So it's totally delightful to be here. This is a poem I wrote about this time last year when things were grimmer. I don't know, grimmer. Okay. So it's called The Better. And it's kind of a co-located poem in that it's located in Jackson Heights and in Maine, these two places I hold in my heart all the time. The Better. We're away, but everyone keeps sending me pictures of the storm, fallen city trees and the cars they cut into. Down the coast from us, a shark eats half a woman. A friend can't resist, asks, which half? The woman had been with her daughter in a black scuba suit that had made her look like a seal. On the salt pond at high tide, the sun is on me and I'm floating. I try to be light while the crabs scuttle underneath my shadow, fighting their way into seaweed. I'm thinking of failure, how all this is borrowed, both the time and the place. Other possibilities branch out from me as I float. I don't know yet that I'll crash when I come back to the city, no ballast to keep me steady. All day, the images of trees fill up my phone along with messages about the shark. The root systems of city trees are a misery. They buckle the sidewalks as they stretch out underneath, seeking water that isn't there. They die from the inside out, standing still and hollow until a storm sweeps them onto the hood of a car whose owner had been relieved to have found a place for it, finally. The salt in the water makes me lighter. We all save our own lives. We die trying. So the next poet is Erika Meitner. I'm so happy to pass the mic to you and hear you.
That's so funny. I didn't know you had a shark poem. My poem is a shark tooth poem. Anyway, I'm thrilled to be here with you all. I'm not actually in Queens. I'm from Queens. So I grew up on the Flushing, Jamaica border in the 70s and 80s. And I'm in Appalachia where we're having a massive, massive rainstorm, which is why I was putting my video off to go close all the windows in my house. So I'm hoping my internet holds out. I actually brought some shark teeth. I don't know if people can see these to show you all, just so you know what I'm talking about in my poems, because I had never seen them before I went to a particular part of Florida. So Rosebud asked for poems on partially on resilience. And the only thing really I did during the pandemic was a friend from Brooklyn came to get me, and we both had a writing residency down on the Gulf Coast of Florida. So we drove like 16 hours during peak COVID to like the hot spot in the country to go write in these shacks on the beach. And so this is kind of a poem about that. Small offerings. In this post-industrial vacation land, we can always return to the shore. And what the shore returns to us is magnanimous. Families plant bright umbrellas in the sand, like they're Armstrong staking the moon, then get on their phones to tell whatever sucker is still home in winter that they're on the beach. Before midday sun, I walk the rack line alongside retirees bent over, looking for shark's teeth and other treasures in piles of shell hash. Some use slotted kitchen spoons, duct taped to golf clubs, to unearth wet sand, and others use Florida snow shovels, mesh baskets on sticks, to patiently sift Gulf detritus. Everyone keeps their heads down meditatively when they walk. Still others are waist deep in the surf with colorful floating sifters. These fossils are Pleistocene epoch, shined black, glistening bits of calcified dentin, like a strip of film passing through a projector's gate, then catching dust on the lens, a rendering of something long gone and nearly traceless, the chance and distance built into the very mechanism of beholding. This year, we've survived not quite the apocalypse, but something close. Look at us, our still seeking bodies, withstanding the waves and rip currents, time and metamorphosis be damned. Thank you. And thanks to Defunct Magazine and Rosebud for bringing us all together. This has been really lovely.
Sorry, I'm trying to like comment to Erika and also like unpin and do all this stuff. So I guess like, just if anyone has any questions for any of the poets have questions for each other, anybody else has questions in the audience, feel free to ask any questions. Would anybody like a cat? He's been misbehaving this entire time. You just don't know. That's why I was turning my camera off. Only when I have work. Otherwise, he's whatever. Anyway, yeah. Any questions, Casey?
Everyone was wonderful in their own very different ways. That's all.
I have a question for folks. How have you been making your work through all of this? We're, I guess, first world, right? But we're in a much better place, at least in Queens and the United States, right? Than we were last year, this time, right? Just checking in poet to poet, how the poetry is coming along as we, head into the fall of 2021.
That's a great question. Who would like to answer it?
I can start. Yeah, so I think in the very beginning of last year, of the lockdown first wave or whatever, I wasn't writing for a long time, and I was very anxious. And then after many months, it just came, a lot of material came. And now I'm not writing because I'm just so busy, but I think that experience is still so recent that I'm like, oh, I trust, I'm less anxious this time around because I'm like, no, I remember what happened, it's gonna come back.
Yes, similarly, I think the first few months, once we were like all quarantining, I found myself not writing any new work, but actually doing a lot of revising. Because when I was revising, I was sort of like able to go back to some other world and kind of just like, immerse myself in the world of that poem or that work. And it took a while for me to start writing new work, because I feel like to write new work, you have to sort of be open to the world, and revising, you sort of close out the world and kind of work on what you've already written. So it took a few months at least to start opening myself up to the world and writing. That's when I started writing new work.
Anyone else want to tackle it?
I'll say something. I love that distinction between, writing and revision, Jared. In terms of opening, I've been thinking about reopening and what that means, and how it's a healing. It's a phase for those of us who have that that room to begin healing. We're not right in the middle of the crisis still, as some people are. There's a pain, to the process of healing. That's something I've been thinking about, and trying to allow for in the writing, that it's not always, there's almost, when you're in some sort of trauma, at times you're almost protected by a kind of haze, of dissociation, that feels somewhat enchanted. And I feel like with the reopening comes a really different experience that can feel very harsh. So those are just some thoughts.
I have a question for people. I'm really interested in what, if anything, brought joy to you, has brought joy to you during this last, it feels like eternity, right? Honestly, but during this last year and a half, I know a lot of us have been dealing with sickness of loved ones and deaths, and a lot of grief, a lot of mourning, a lot of fear. Yeah, and then I'm wondering, like, what brought you joy, if anything?
Tonight brought me joy, but I'm going to hear more details from other people.
Hearing from Rosebud brought me joy, right? Just thinking about where the idea for this issue came from, and just the heart and the resilience to connect to others, to connect to us, and then to bring Defunct, back. Though I don't think Defunct ever left. I get the name, it sounds so corny, but I mean, just all of us being here tonight, I don't take it for granted. And I have dear friends in Louisiana who had to they had to drive to Alabama, and they withstood the storm and COVID. And so that's why I genuinely asked how folks are making poems, because that's so life affirming, that connection, right? That source that we each have. And so for Rosebud to be in your place where you were and talking to Hilma, and I totally understand you, and but I don't take for granted you wanting to connect with us and share with us. That's really inspiring.
Yeah, I was kind of moved. Actually, I was in a very bad place, I think, in the height of the pandemic. And, I live near Elmhurst. I don't live too far away from Elmhurst, and kind of like in the epicenter of everything. And poets, some of my friends, but poets and writers of all people, I don't mean of all people, but you know what I mean. They put their own lives at risk, during the height of, like, again, the pandemic. It came into the apartment and got me out. And I will never forget that as long as I live. But someone very important to me, who you probably can guess who I'm talking about, said to me as he was exiting my life that I had nothing to show for my life. And that really destroyed me. And I was stupid enough to ask what he meant by that, because he was just waiting to tell me. And he just said, well, you write your shitty little poems. It doesn't matter. You don't own anything. You don't own a car. You don't own your own home. Your parents don't own anything. You're a failure, in this world. You don't have anything to show. And I really absorbed that. And again, it was poets and writers who pulled me out of that. And I have a kind of serious chronic illness. I'm actually dealing with it pretty well. My neurologist is kind of like, wow. But I just sort of looked at this, and my family is scattered all over the US-Mexican border. A lot of my family lives in the Rio Grande Valley, where COVID it just went crazy there. And I am someone in my family who, if I know my relatives will probably see this, and I'm glad to do this, but they lean on me. And so then suddenly I was like their framework. And so then they couldn't lean on me during this period. And they figured out ways to, I was suddenly in a different position. And I just am a night owl by nature. I've always been that way. And so I don't sleep very much anymore. I probably sleep like 4 hours a night. And I know that can't go on forever, I'm aware. But I probably sleep 4 hours a night. And so I just use this time to write poems. And I don't know if joy is necessarily the cause or the effect, but joy is very peculiar, because joy just sort of takes hold of you, right? When something brings you joy, it just takes hold of you, and it's very sudden, and it doesn't necessarily have causation. It's a very strange feeling. And when I was putting this together, and I knew I was going to write this series called Night Call, to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't want to be alone for the first of it. I wanted people around me. And when I think about the fact that I moved back into my old apartment where the misery started, and I live in the same neighborhood, I think to myself that this borough just saves my life again and again. I've never felt at home anywhere. I love the Rio Grande Valley. I really do. And I've loved other places I've lived, but there's just nothing like Queens for me. I don't know what it is, and it doesn't bother me that I had to leave something behind, but also still make this my own place. So I'm rambling, but I just wanted to say that for joy, it's just ongoing, and it's constantly needing band-aids. And I'm just really happy to be here with you all tonight. And I didn't cry for once, so that's good. This is a recording. Hi. Anyway, who else? Somebody else.
Is it poetry if no one cries?
No, I've been weeping very heavily.
I agree. Like Queens, totally. The combination for me of Queens and being able to go to Governor's Island and spend time with artists, like having to leave Queens, but also like once it was possible to leave Queens, that helped. And also, I just did a bunch of online dance classes where I could just really fully shake it and no one could see me, and then so now I feel like I can really dance. I may or may not be able to, but that was the joy. I was like, oh, this. And sometimes there were poems about artists, and I have a Hilma poem to show you, Rosebud, if you want to see. The Guggenheim Hilma.
I think one of the complicated things about the pandemic for me was caregiving. My kids were home all the time, like all the time, like many people's children, which means as an extrovert artist, it was the worst possible scenario. Like I got to be alone in the shower sometimes. And I also couldn't travel and see other artists. But one of the, I think, and I stopped writing completely, and I'm very open about that because I want other people to not feel bad about not writing for very long stretches of time. But I think one of the really interesting joys has been walking. So I live in like rural Appalachia, and people really like, some people walk, but there really isn't like the same kind of walking culture there is in New York City. And one of the things I've missed the most about living in the city is being a pedestrian. Like my grandmother lived a couple blocks from me in Queens and never had a car and never learned to drive, kind of thing. But during the pandemic, a walking culture started like almost everywhere around here. And so after dinner, everyone would be just out walking, and it was amazing. And it's still happening. Like there's still this pedestrian culture that's kind of sprung up, and that's something that's brought me great joy. And so it feels like a little bit, even though we don't pass any like stores, there's no like human geography. It brings me joy to like see my neighbors out in the streets after dinner. So
Erika, do you carry your shark tooth with you? I see you carrying the shark tooth.
no, but I have this like unironic fanny pack I wear when I walk that has like all kinds of things in it. And often there's like small treasures that either one of my kids gives me when we're out, or like I find on the paths. So I do often have like rocks or sticks or chips of things or.
Talisman, that's incredible. So who else? Would anybody like to ask a question or answer one that's been asked?
I can answer the joy question.
Please.
What has brought me joy has just been being present with myself. The pandemic before then, because living in New York City, you're constantly on the go, going from this place, that place. And so the one fortunate thing was the pandemic allowed me to just sit more with myself, to be more in tune with my own body, to hold myself more, to be present with the people in my life more, to appreciate the things I have more. Like I had more time to just go through the things in my own room and just connect with the things that I have. Like I got more deeply interested in tarot and oracle cards that I was collecting, but I didn't really have time for. And so it just gave me a chance to be more present, and that brought me more joy.
Well, I have one last question for everyone. If you don't want to answer it, it's okay, because I can imagine this might be heavy for some of you. But how, from this moment on, do you plan to go forward? And you can interpret that however you want. How do you plan to go forward? Professor Ben-Oni at work.
Well, I was actually talking about this with Yael the other day, because we were saying like, I remember before the pandemic, we were looking at our April calendar, and like I had a ton of work and y'all had a ton of work, and we had all these events going on, and we were just like, oh no, like my mom can't help out this much. We're gonna have trouble. And then of course, we had nothing that month. There was absolutely nothing on the calendar that month and for the many months after. And so we told ourselves that when things do start to open up again, we're going to kind of step back into the craziness and the packed busyness of our life, sort of with more caution. I think that we're not going to jump both feet right back into soccer and swimming and hip hop and Hebrew class and this and that. And like and try to make sure that like not half of our, conversations were about the calendar. And, try to, just to see if we could take the good parts of the last year and a half and apply it sort of moving forward and not be quite as busy.
If I can chime in, to your point, Rosebud, about Queens being like the epicenter. Recently, in August, I participated in a short film with documentarian Lynn Sachs that was shot in Elmhurst, actually, in one of the food courts there that's just been decimated by COVID. And it's tied to a book of mine that's coming out in October. And so we're actually going to be doing a pop-up reading in front of the space, maybe in the park across the street, and really just celebrate Elmhurst. It's just in people's memories outside of Queens, it's a place of death. It's, just one kind of image, but you make your way there. I walk there all the time with my family. I mean, it's just resilience. And in this time of Asian hate, which is severely underreported, I wanted to work with, a filmmaker who has seen me and has seen AAPI folks and be in the space and just really document a Queens that, I don't think you really see outside of being in here. So, I be in the moment and, but also be safe because it's crazy, the variant, and you don't know where it's going to turn. That's my immediate plan. I'll clue everybody in on the dates of that in October.
Yeah, please do. And then do you want to tell us the name of your book that's coming out in October?
Yeah, it's called OBB. I've been working on it for over 20 years. It's my manifesto on the connection between comic books and poetry. And
oh my God.
Thank you. I'm a true geek, and it's timely in that it's coming out, 20 years after 9/11, because it's very much haunted by, that experience. I'd love for everybody to be on that sidewalk when we do our celebration. And I think we're going to be screening actually the film inside of the space, so you folks can take a look at our film, whichever draft it's in, but it's Lynn Sachs, so it'll be a pretty amazing film. So I'll let you know.
Awesome. Please keep us in the loop. I guess, a geek then? I can't wait. Anyone else want to answer?
Okay, I'll answer, but I had to write my answer down because that's the only way that things work for me, right? I wrote a bunch of stuff. See, look. Yeah. So I think the main thing is loving, right? But what does that mean, right? Y'all know this is like my obsession. Like, what does it mean? So like dancing, writing, dreaming, singing, going to the ocean, breathing, reading, collaborating, looking at flowers, laughing. Right? That's all. Like everything I'm attempting to do is what I hope, right? Like in everything, including my academic work, is that it's a form of love, So going forward like that, like sometimes I'm just not going to be on Instagram because that's not always the way that I love. You know what I mean? Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't love that way, if that makes sense to y'all. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, really, like being deeply in the moment. I so appreciated what you all said, being as deeply in the moment as possible. and like just loving up on myself and the air and the water and y'all and the kids who were here and aren't here and will be here and all that. So yeah.
I'm glad this is a recording because that might be your next poem, Ekere. Hold on to that. This is recorded and Erin will upload it. Notes have been taken, right? Anyone else?
I have a thought, and I will be journaling about this later. So thank you, Rosebud, for the question about how will you move forward from here. I think something that I'd like to keep doing, that I've been more conscious of doing, and something I'd like to keep doing is having a balance between the solitude, which, you know, some of us have had a lot of, and but also the connection, you know, showing up to connect with other people. And so thank you to the people who came to hear us read. You know, that's a way of connecting. Just even though it may be uncomfortable at times, you know, to show up for connection, real connection. That's something I'd like to keep doing in small ways.
To follow up on that in a way, like since we had this audit of our lives, I think I've just been trying to act on the audit, right? So I was looking at everything and crunching all the people and numbers, and I really just don't want to do anything by half measures anymore, or to sit on top of things that bring me joy. I want to just risk how much they scare me. So I mean, we all just can see we could all go, right? So if that's the case, why don't we try to live bigger, you know, and let ourselves love the things we love.
That's beautiful, Casey. Anyone else?
I mean, I think the complicated thing right now for me, at least in moving forward, is I feel like we're still in a liminal space. And so I think a lot about a yoga teacher I once had who said, there's a space when you've exhaled all your breath, but you haven't inhaled yet. And that feels like where we're kind of sitting now. And it's interesting. We have all these amazing books coming out. I have a book coming out in April. And one of the things I vowed to do was be able to go on the road with it. Like I was really hoping I could go on the road with it because travel brings me great joy. And going back home to New York brings me great joy. But everything feels so up in the air right now that that's been really hard for me because I haven't been able to plan anything yet. And one of the great joys for me was doing like an actual embodied reading over this summer in Bryant Park. And like seeing humans in like, and getting to like, you know, be kinetic. And so I think one of the things I'm trying to be patient with is the idea that we might not know for a little while still what moving forward means exactly yet and how to do it. And some of us are being asked to do things we're not totally, like I'm teaching in person right now, and I'm not super comfortable about it. And so I think one of the things that's been complicated, and this goes to what Casey says, is trying to find a really good balance between pushing yourself into things you fear for good reasons and things you fear for smart reasons. And so I think I'm still in a sort of phase of trying to figure out how to plan again, and how to embody again, and how to human again, and what to look forward to exactly.
I'm traveling in the fall quite a bit for in-person readings at different universities. And if this helps anyone, I just set outright that I have certain measures that I would like to be put in place, you know, just for my chronic illness, like maybe not doing 5 things in one day. Maybe asking if I can spread them out, but also just, asking outright, like, well, what are you doing with your classrooms if I do a classroom visit in addition to like the university reading? And I don't know about the rest of you. It sounds like this might be the case, but this has just really taught me to advocate for myself, to not be afraid to ask for things, because I never learned how to do that. I think like a lot of us, like my parents are working class. I grew up relatively poor, and you just kind of jump face first into this sort of life that's largely different, and there's really nobody you can ask. And I feel like in the past, things are very different now, but in the past, like asking mentors these kind of questions was almost embarrassing, right? Because the class issue would suddenly come out. They're like, oh, you don't know how to use that fork? You know what I mean? And I feel like the pandemic has forced me, just to advocate for myself, and to say, no, you're not going to do that to me, or no, I need to know exactly what I'm jumping into, right? And it's been very strange. So with my own moving forward, I'm just going to try a lot of new things that terrify me, like finishing a novel. If my agent is watching this later, yes, I'm actually writing it. I promise. No more poems. No, I'm still writing poems. Anyway, just, finishing a novel, and just, taking chances like I did when I was younger, because I have to. And so it's really weird when I asked you all to think about how do we come together, how do we connect, you all had very different answers. And I just think of connection, it's fragile right now, whether it's in person or not, with our families, our friends, our communities. And I just wonder, like, can we really be honest without someone getting hurt? I don't know. It's going to be a strange time, but Erika, I really hope you can go on your tour, and Paolo as well. You have a book coming out. There is, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe not the 7 train tunnel, but I'm sorry, I have to say it. That's my train, by the way. Anyway, anyone else want to add anything? Any final remarks? I probably shouldn't be the one to have the final remarks. You don't want that.
Before the final remarks, who is up to doing a screenshot?
Oh.
Yeah. How about whoever does not want to be in a screenshot, like just turn the camera off for a second, and then I'll do the screenshot. Does that sound good?
Well, I was going to say, the people that are off camera right now, if they want to get on camera,
yeah,
3 of them are my editors from Defunct. They've been listening patiently and being really cool. I don't know if they want to turn their cameras on. They don't have to. Hey, Eli. Hey, Zoe. Hey, Darla. And then there's 2 folks I don't know. So Rebecca and Cassandra, no pressure. I don't know who you folks are. But yeah, it would be nice to have a screenshot of all of us. Hey, Eli, there you are. Hey, Zoe, there you are. Hey, Darla, come join us. Hey, Darla, where you at? Where you at, Darla?
I'll do. No screenshot for you. Perfect. Okay. That's good. Thank you, Darla. All right, let me turn off there you go. And yay, there you go. Perfect. I'll send it to you on the email.
Thank you, Anna.
So Erin, do you want to close this out? I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
No, yeah, I mean, it is, but it isn't, because you all are just lovely. And so thank you for welcoming me into your community, not knowing me, and just choosing to trust me because Rosebud chose to trust me. That means a lot to me. And I think that this is a beautiful collaboration that will be presented very nicely on the internet so that people can access this gorgeous thing that happened this evening, and also just the poems themselves as they exist on the page. They will all be available really soon. And I'm a little verklempt. I'm a little overwhelmed with the gratitude of just being available to all of your work and the ways in which you all have helped me process the ways in which the last, year and a half have been really hard. So thank you. I'm grateful to each of you. And I look forward to the ways in which this tonight is going to bloom into other things, bloom into sort of more tangible things that we can share with our people. And yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful that you trusted me. So Rosebud, do you want to say the last few minutes?
Yeah, I mean, Erin, I feel like I've known you all my life. We just like clicked,
Seriously.
I'm just so grateful to you and Defunct and to all the poets. And, I just really thank you. There's been a lot of, I think I mentioned this in another reading I did, that there's just been a lot of talk about, poetry and some other stuff that had happened on Twitter. It always happens on Twitter. Right. And I don't know, I will be forever changed by what happened to me over the pandemic when I did not have language to even discuss to my family like what was happening to me. It was poets who helped me, and a fiction writer, I should mention her, and I've just been forever changed by it. And so I just think that there's something about poetry that indicates everything towards a future period. I think it is the future of language. I think it's the future of discovery. I think I'm not quite sure yet, but there was something really powerful that has happened in these past 2 years through poetry, at least for me. So with that said, thank you so much for joining. And
Hey, thank you all.
Paolo talked about maybe an in-person reading for this, so we'll let everyone know. So have a lovely night. And what else? I don't know. Queens is
Thank you,
awesome.
Rosebud. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Queens represent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.